Hello, my name is Mike Dant, and I am a student in the Freedom of Expression course at Eastern Illinois University. Today I'll be presenting for you a discussion on the case of Brandenburg v. Ohio, a United States Supreme Court case from 1969, and its impact on the First Amendment law and the freedom of speech rights in the United States. As background to the presentation, Clarence Brandenburg was a Ku Klux Klan member convicted of violating the Ohio Syndicalism Act after the television broadcast of film in which he spoke to a group of Ku Klux Klan members at a rally in 1964. Brandenburg was subsequently fined and sentenced to prison for violating the act, which made it illegal to promote criminal acts and violence or to commit sabotage in order to accomplish political reform. Brandenburg appealed to the United States Supreme Court, which overturned the decision and invalidated the Ohio law. In doing so, the court distinguished between actions that simply advocate for change and those that constitute an incitement to lawless activities. As such, the court began a movement away from the long-held reliance on the bad tendency doctrine, which restricted actions aimed at inciting imminent unlawful acts, to referencing the incitement standard, which ensures a much broader protection of speech. The Supreme Court ruling had a significant impact on past and future cases and prompted changes in the criteria that must be met before an individual's right to freedom of speech and to assemble can be legally restricted. This presentation will discuss a brief review and history of the Ku Klux Klan, as well as Brandenburg's speeches to the group of Klan members. We will also discuss the arrest and conviction of Brandenburg, as well as the appeal of his conviction to the United States Supreme Court, and as well as the impact of the Supreme Court ruling on freedom of speech under the First Amendment of the United States Constitution. As noted earlier, Brandenburg was the leader of the Ku Klux Klan, which has a long history of racist activity in the United States. The Ku Klux Klan was formed in Tennessee in 1866 as a social club, but quickly evolved into a group aimed at restoring white supremacy in the South, according to their words, after the Reformist Acts in the 1800s. To this day, it remains a constant threat to African Americans and other nationalities, in spite of legislation aimed at curbing the activities of the Klan. As noted earlier, Brandenburg presented two speeches at the rally in Hamilton County in 1964. Those in attendance at the rally consisted of Ku Klux Klan members, as well as a television reporter and cameraman invited by Mr. Brandenburg to film the event. As he spoke to the assembled group, Brandenburg noted that the Ohio group of Ku Klux Klan members was the largest organized body in the state, and while noting that the society or that the group was not a revengeant group, they could be a revengeant group if the United States government did not discontinue the practice of suppressing the rights of the white Caucasian in the United States. Brandenburg also noted that the Klan would be marching on U.S. Congress in Washington, D.C. in July of that year, specifically on July 4th. Film of the rally was shown on national television networks after that time, and Brandenburg was subsequently arrested. After being convicted of the Ohio Syndicalism Act, Brandenburg appealed his conviction to the United States Supreme Court. As a review, the Ohio Syndicalism Act made it illegal to promote criminal acts and violence or to commit sabotage in order to commit or to accomplish political reform. There are a number of syndicalism laws in the United States at the time of Brandenburg's convictions, which all had similar wording and language, and there had been a number of cases argued both at state courts and some before the United States Supreme Court that had been upheld for violating similar syndicalism laws. One of those examples is Whitney v. California, which we will discuss later in the presentation. Brandenburg's attorney argued before the U.S. Supreme Court that Brandenburg was deprived of his rights to free speech and the right to assemble under the First Amendment of the United States Constitution, as well as his right to due process under the 14th Amendment of the Constitution. The attorney further argued that his speeches were intended only to advocate for change and did not rise to the level of inciting violence as a means to accomplish those changes. After hearing the attorney's arguments and subsequent discussion, the United States Supreme Court overturned Brandenburg's conviction unanimously in 1969, determining that Brandenburg's speeches were in fact interpreted as only advocating for change and not as an incitement to unlawful action. In the process, the Supreme Court also invalidated the Ohio Syndicalism Act. The case of Brandenburg v. Ohio has a significant impact on freedom of speech, both past and present to this day. A broader, more liberal standard for what is considered protected speech has been established using the incitement standard in subsequent rulings of the Supreme Court since that time, and the reliance on the bad tendency doctrine has diminished since that time as well. The 1927 finding of Whitney v. California was also reversed as part of the findings in Brandenburg v. Ohio. The case of Whitney versus California involved a young woman who was convicted of violating the California Syndicalism Act for attempting to and assisting to establish a local office of the Communist Party. Again, that was overruled by and invalidated by the Brandenburg ruling in 1969. Since Brandenburg, a more liberal standard has been applied by the court in deciding the freedom of speech cases. In summary, Clarence Brandenburg was known as a recognized leader of the Ku Klux Klan in Ohio and spoke at a private rally of Klansmen at a remote Ohio farm. After his speeches were broadcast, Brandenburg was arrested, tried, and convicted of violating the Ohio Syndicalism Act. He appealed his conviction to the United States Supreme Court on the grounds that his First Amendment rights to free speech and to assemble had been violated. After hearing arguments, the court overturned his decision, finding that his words were merely viewed as advocating for change and were not to be interpreted as an incitement of imminent lawless action. The court also reversed the finding previously in 1927 of Whitney v. California. After Brandenburg, the court utilized the more liberal standards for determining what speech is protected. In conclusion, the impact of the Supreme Court case in Brandenburg v. Ohio still resonates today as a landmark event in protecting one's right to freedom of speech under the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. In overturning Brandenburg's conviction and reversing certain previous court cases, the court set a new precedent in the protection of freedom of speech. Reliance on both bad tendency and clear and present danger doctrines diminished, and the more fitting incitement standard became the benchmark for determining what speech may be restricted. The court rightly determined that only that speech which was geared at inciting imminent lawless action should be restricted, and if that also had a likelihood of occurrence happening. In subsequent findings since Brandenburg, the court has continued to reinforce the freedom of speech protected by the afforded by the First Amendment of the United States Constitution. Thank you.